Now, there are roughly a million problems with the Democratic Party at the moment, but there's one that nobody's talking about, and that's how to talk about Republicans other than Trump. And that's because Trump basically sucks the oxygen out of the daily news cycle. He says and does all of these crazy things. So, on a daily basis, we're talking about tariffs or immigration or this crackdown on crime. And a lot of that criticism is fully justified, of course. But at the end of the day, and God willing, we're not going to be facing Trump in the coming years. And instead, we're going to be facing all of these other Republicans who have basically supported what Trump has been doing the entire time. And my humble submission for the way to refer to these Republicans is Dildo Republicans. And in this episode, I'll get to why that is and focus on some of our favorites: J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth. So welcome to Left and Loose. I'm your host, Rich Kim, and this is the weekly show where I call out Republican bullshit. Now, before we get into the episode, I just want to talk about how the show has gone so far. The first 3 episodes I thought went very well, and the show has gotten some traction on TikTok actually. But what I realized was the episodes so far have been really serious, which I don't regret. I mean, these were very serious topics at the end of the day, and I'm happy that I covered them the way that I did. But the show is meant to be a little bit loose, a little bit crazy, and so the tone of the show going forward is basically going to be a lot of what you're going to see today. So, getting into this episode, and before getting on to the MAGA Dildo Squad, I just want to linger on Trump a little bit. If there's one thing that I'll give Trump credit for, which is a rare thing, it's that he can put things in this very simple and outrageous way that people can remember. Make America great again, America first, build the wall, Kamala's for they, them, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, and now most recently, radical left. I mean, the list goes on and on. And the thing about these simple ideas is that MAGA can then use this and weaponize this to attack Democrats every day. That they tell a story about Democrats, which of course is largely bullshit, and I get into this, for example, in my episodes about Republican contempt or about Charlie Kirk. But that's not the point at the end of the day, right? It's to tell a story about Democrats, regardless of what the truth actually is. And my strong view, and I'll get into this also in future episodes, is we need to fight fire with fire at this point. That we need to take a page out of the MAGA playbook and start talking in ways that represent these simple and even insane ideas in a way that's just going to also convey this story about them as well. So that's why I think we should start using terms like Dildo Republicans, because it also just tells a story. It tells a story about these mostly guys who previously stood for actual values and actual, things that they said that they wanted to accomplish for this country. And then as soon as they got even the slightest whiff of power in the Trump administration, they just shoved this huge Trump golden dildo right up the ass and went with whatever Trump was saying. And I think this is basically how we can tell a story about who these people actually are and just the harm that they've done to the American people. So in this episode, I'll spend sort of more time with J.D. Vance and then get to, honorable mentions for Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. So going to J.D. Vance, or if you will, the jewel dildo of them all. So you may know his story. He grew up in small town America in Ohio and from a very poor background, and I'll give it to him. He really made something of himself. He went to Yale Law School, he became a venture capitalist, and then he was funded by the Republican tech billionaire Peter Thiel to then run for Senate in Ohio. Now, there's already questions around who this guy was really going to represent once he made it to the Senate after being funded again from a Republican tech billionaire. But okay, his story was that he was representing small town America. He wrote this book about it, which has been basically a Bible on the right called Hillbilly Elegy. And in this book, it was all about the forgotten man. Basically, these small towns that were devastated and left behind, and these people that were left behind as the rest of America prospered and globalized. Now, notably, when Trump was first running for his first term in 2016, J.D. Vance called Trump America's Hitler. His basic point there was Trump is a right-wing populist who is promising to do something for the working class when that's not actually the case, that he's going to sell out the working class. This is probably one of the only times that J.D. Vance and all of liberal America have agreed. You know where the story went from there. J.D. Vance changed his mind when Trump came to power, and during Trump 1.0, J.D. Vance suddenly could see all the merits of the Trump agenda. Now, people are allowed to change their mind, so, it is what it is. The problem is, of course, where it went from there. J.D. Vance runs with Trump in 2024, and now we have Trump 2.0 and the daily fresh hells that we're being confronted with. Now, the reason why I think J.D. Vance is the jewel dildo of them all is because of how much that he has sold out small town America while being part of this administration and then putting this fake intellectual veneer over it all. So taking, for example, tariffs. Tariffs have affected the people who are just struggling to get by, the people who are going to Walmart or their other local grocery stores to pick up their food, their clothing, or whatever. They're seeing their prices raised. Farmers also are being affected by these tariffs as well. These people in these rural communities who can't even sell their crops because China is no longer buying due to the trade war. Now, people like J.D. Vance will say, oh, this is just short-term pain for long-term gain. And now I don't believe that that's even right, that you should sacrifice people's livelihoods for this right-wing sort of radical policy. But okay, even if you believed in that, this wouldn't be the way to do it, right? The question is, what are the tariffs currently right now? I think a lot of people in America would really struggle to even tell you what that is, let alone how are businesses who have any sort of international supply chain, which is most businesses, big or small at the end of the day, how are they supposed to know what the tariffs are supposed to be 6 months from now? When the tariffs are dependent on the blood sugar level of Trump on any given day, it's impossible to make any sort of planning decisions around this. And remember, if you're going to invest into a factory or if you're going to change anything about a supply chain, this takes billions of dollars and years of planning to do. It makes it impossible to accomplish the goals that you even set out from the beginning. But of course, J.D. Vance is there to say, oh, greatest economy ever, that this is going to bring back all of this manufacturing to America. And what he doesn't say is, fuck all these other people in the process. But even with that, JD Vance is a lot of things, but he's not a stupid guy. He knows that this is not actually the way to do it that would accomplish your goals, right? And then just briefly to cover this big beautiful bill, or the big billionaire blowjob as we call it around here. That plus this controversy of the shutdown resulting in, let's see, Medicaid being cut, it's resulting in food stamps being cut, and it's resulting in increases to the Obamacare insurance premiums because of expiration of the subsidies. So the first people who are affected by this are people in like small town America, people in Ohio and in these small towns that JD Vance purports to represent. And they are the ones who are like need these services in order to get by. And they're the ones who are seeing basically their healthcare cut, or large portions of their grocery budgets cut, or they're seeing then their premiums increase if things actually don't get worked out in this shutdown with Democrats around some sort of healthcare subsidy to help them with that. And again, there's JD Vance saying that, oh, this is something that is necessary to do, that this was something that it's part of the Trump agenda. And what is all of this for at the end of the day? This was for the big blowjob. It was for an even bigger payout to the people who need it the least in our society. And that is why this level of hypocrisy and this level of, pretending like you're looking out for small town America when you're doing everything to fuck over small town America is why JD Vance has the biggest jewel dildo of them all, just jammed and wedged right up there. So moving on to Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is basically the tiny beta male servant boy of the group. He's the tiny dildo, if you will. He was a senator. He was part of the Foreign Relations Committee, and he used to stand for things like American soft power. He viewed himself as like this sort of global statesman. His expertise is sort of foreign affairs. And he used to stand for all of these things around American foreign policy, like sort of our values there. But of course, now that he's part of the Trump administration, he's overseen basically the cuts to USAID. And on that, he's gone with these Republican lies about things like, oh, USAID gave condoms to Hamas. USAID was giving out food to hungry people all over the world. The programs like PEPFAR and USAID were giving out AIDS medications to people all around the world. And Marco Rubio knew that, but he still went with this lie to purposely destroy this agency. To destroy this agency that was maybe costing American taxpayers somewhere between 0.1% of the budget and 1% of the budget, to do good works all around the world. And so that we had a presence in all of these different countries without actually having to send our military there. Think about it. You don't want to get into foreign conflicts. You don't want to have your military in everywhere and soldiers' lives at risk. Instead, you send out these people from USAID who are there to just help people and to, basically show America as the good guys, as opposed to China, for example. But Marco Rubio, who used to believe in these things, as part of the Trump administration, just threw that all out the window and has since destroyed this thing that was doing a lot of good. And the way that they went about it too is probably the most disturbing, where back when Doge was a thing, in their sort of ketamine drug fueled rush, they cut so many aspects of USAID at once that it resulted in, for example, food that the American taxpayers had already paid for, or medicines that the American taxpayers had already paid for, just rotting or expiring in warehouses without being distributed. And as a result, people who are relying on this food or relying on this AIDS medications, I mean, you need to take AIDS medications regularly, died. That there's been projections around that. You could talk about what the numbers actually are, but it is some very significant number of people who have died as a result of that and who are continuing to suffer and die. Honestly, I don't know how this guy, Marco Rubio, can sleep at night. And you really don't even have to look beyond our borders to talk about Marco Rubio's tiny dildo energy. I mean, even just the way that he talks with Trump about, and he demonstrates this sycophancy around, oh, Trump is solving all of these foreign wars and greatest president ever, and he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. It churns the stomach. But on like a policy basis as well, Rubio has overseen these revocations of visas for people in the States and these revocations of temporary protected status. So God forbid that someone comes to this country and they participate in a demonstration against Israel, a peaceful demonstration against Israel, or they sign their name onto an op-ed saying that what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide, something that many Americans, including myself, agree with, and I've seen my previous episode for that. Or God forbid that there are people who come to this country legally under this temporary protected status, and then Trump decides that he just doesn't want them to be here anymore because they're blacks from Haiti rather than whites from South Africa. In all of these instances, it's just randomly decided that all of a sudden these people are going to have their status here revoked. And Marco Rubio, who previously believed in things like, free speech or maybe a chance here at the American dream, he just goes and does Trump's bidding, right? He trots over and does whatever Trump's dirty work is, regardless of whatever he previously stood for, and that's ultimately the tiny dildo energy that he brings to all of this. So finally, we'll go to Pete Hegseth. So, as you guys know, before becoming Secretary of War, which, we'll definitely talk about in a future episode, Pete Hegseth was a weekend anchor of the Fox and Friends. He, in true Fox News fashion, was basically towing the line. That he showed up to this show and was repeating and vomiting out whatever the Fox News talking points were. So he was the one who was going on, for example, about Hillary Clinton's emails and the fact that she used a private server to send some of her emails, and just how much of a betrayal of trust and a betrayal of national security that was. And he was also going on about the Hunter Biden scandal and how it was so wrong that Hunter Biden was profiting off of the Biden family name and was serving on this Ukrainian company's board, Burisma, and just how much that was also a betrayal of the American trust. And then, sure enough, when he comes into office, there's two things that are interesting, right? First is he sends out this message on Signal, a private messaging app, to basically as big of a group he possibly could, not only within the government, but also his personal contacts as well. And then he also, of course, messed up by including a journalist in this, that a journalist was included. But he sent a message, not just normal, confidential national security related stuff, but actual war plans about when there was going to be a strike on Houthi rebels, because he wanted to brag to as many people as he possibly could about him being the big man, him ordering the strike. And he gave detailed information on when the strike occurred. And if anyone of our many enemies out there had gotten this information, could easily exploit that to launch a counterattack against the actual U.S. Jets that are coming in to conduct this strike. So there's this just rank hypocrisy there, right? And then beyond that, when it comes to just the unbelievable corruption that has been happening in the Trump administration, again, a topic for a future episode, there's the $2 billion Emirati deal in exchange for AI chips. That is where $2 billion is going right to the Trump family in exchange for delivering more chips. Or there's the $400 million Qatari jet that is being accepted by Trump in his not only presidential but in the future in his personal capacity, that will also cost $1 billion taxpayer dollars to retrofit. Just this unbelievable level of corruption that is going on that is also posing national security risk, like for example with all of these foreign influences and this jet that could very well have whatever listening devices on it. Pete Hegseth, not a word about like what's going on here. Whereas in a previous life, this was all that he could talk about, right? When it's Democrats on a much smaller scale, then it's on and on. That's his entire livelihood. But now there's not even a word on it. But then, of course, getting even to the even more important point in his role as Secretary of War is how he's treating the military. Now, it's interesting that for someone who prides himself on how much of a military guy he is, that he can't seem to remember what the military actually stands for. The military does not stand for waging war in American streets. They do not stand for waging war on Americans. However, when Trump stands up in front of 800 generals and says that he's going to wage war on American cities, and he stands up talking about waging war on the enemy within, again, Pete Hegseth is suddenly all on board on this. He is all on board with the Trump agenda. And there's just something that is just so greasy about this, that is just so wrong about, hey, the military is meant to keep us safe from our adversaries, to keep us safe from all of these countries who do want the downfall of America. And you're going to come in and use the military instead to attack blue cities, to attack people who just maybe didn't vote for you, to police people who, because of whatever they're saying about this administration or they're protesting ICE. There's just something so greasy about this that I think he's basically he has like the greasy dildo energy going on right now. That's really what's probably jammed up there, would be my guess. So you get basically this whole idea around this dildo thing, right? It's all of these people who previously stood for something, but when they're in the Trump administration have basically sold out America in the process. That no matter how radical, no matter how harmful, no matter how gross, whatever the Trump administration is doing, they're just supporting this. They're going for it. They're just basically Trump's lapdogs in this process and supporting him in doing things that are harming Americans and what like America really is about at the end of the day. And also just people who are just trying to find some way in the system here, who are following like ultimately American values. But to them, it doesn't matter. It matters the power that they can hang on to as part of the Trump administration. And that's why we should hang this over their heads. Not only over this MAGA dildo squad, but over all of these dildo Republicans that we're going to be facing in the midterms in 2028. And to that, cheers to you guys. Let's fucking do it.